Welcome back to my game dev series where I build a game in C++ and SDL2. So yesterday I was updating my maps, and where I landed with that was where I used to have those out-of-bounds trees just kind of hard-coded in and added into the maps programmatically. I just pulled out that logic and I went with the simple course of action of adding those here all the way around in the map file. So that's 8 tiles all the way around on all sides. If I run that, you'll see it works out just fine. So I had to do a little bit of kind of custom scripting, and PHP is oftentimes what I use for that, just so I could extract the trees and put them into their own structure, mainly in the main JSON file, because that map is quite large and that has a lot of tree entities. So I didn't count how many it was, but it's probably I thought it was over 200. Yeah, that's not nicely formatted, but ideally you never have to look at this or edit it manually. You just be using an editor to kind of modify that. So at this point everything is good, and I had a couple minor housekeeping things I wanted to look at. First of all, in my types file, I had added these from JSON functions, and that'll deserialize the point float type and the tree type. I would just like to put those close to the types that use them. So I'll put this one here underneath tree. I'm going to move this point float one up to the top under point float. And then in the future, if we need to make any more, I will just continue to add those, beneath the struct that applies to them, or that they apply to. That should be good. Let's see, there was a second thing. That was, I believe, in JSON Reader. I had talked about changing this, reading it from binary just to the plain straight JSON string, and I could use a #define to do that. So I'm just going to try to implement that now really quick. So debug equals 1, define type serialized type binary. Oh, you serialize to binary. I guess that makes sense. Else we'll try that. So in here, we should be able to just do that. So in the first case, our input file stream will read binary, otherwise it will just read normal string type text or whatever that ends up being. So we'll do the same thing down here on this line. That'll be these two lines actually. So in this else case, I believe we want to do map equals. I don't know if it was necessarily equals, it was synergy in okay, so we can just use the double arrow kind of thing there. I just want to see this here for reference. Comment those out. We have our stream. Their stream is named I. Ours is named IFS. So IFS goes into map. Not sure if that's correct or not. No, must not be. Oh, IFS. I don't know if I need to do that. Interesting. Service to binary should be 0. I love when I think a thing is going to be easy and then it ends up not being. So just for the sake of my sanity here, let me try this. This should theoretically be reading straight from the JSON file, not the CBOR file. Doesn't seem to like that. which is interesting because name should be set accordingly. This all happens in the trigger function, trigger H, trigger CPP, teleport, map, load map. Of course, that's going to take me back to this. No, okay, sorry. That's going to cause some problems. Okay, that's reading straight JSON. So if we are serializing to binary, that is our extension name. Let's do this. Define that outside of the if, and we'll just call it JSON by default. If binary, we'll give it that extension, and then in here we will pass in the extension as such. Oops. How on earth? Okay, that'll probably help us out a bit. Then we can uncomment this stuff. Now that it has the correct file type, it's still going to blow up because, you know, programming. I don't know why it's thinking that IFS is undeclared. Like, can you do that and then you can pass it some crap inside here? I mean, I don't really think it makes a ton of sense. Structure. Open. So this would be does that make sense? I think that might make sense. Lovely. So in either case, if we have debug set to 0, it should load from binary, and it should still run just fine. There you go. Well, I'm happy with that. I still don't quite understand why this couldn't have just been defined in side either the if or the else, because it can only be one of those, right? It's a Boolean condition, and our input file stream would have been declared in either instance. So I'm a little bit confused about why that was. But, you know, I'll take it. It is what it is. So let's just do a quick diff here. Commit these small changes just so we don't have to lump everything into one giant commit. Okay, now I think what I wanted to do was move on to some of the next tasks that I've been thinking about lately. That has to do with the battle screen. Oops, I gotta rebuild so I have my debug console on. Something else I can do quick as well, now that I have the game reading from the straight JSON files, I can remove this convert maps line up here. Let me just comment that out actually. Load map battle. So here's again kind of one of the battle maps. That'll wipe into the battle screen, and you can see it's outputting this battle logic output down here. So what I wanted to do was start kind of mocking out what this screen is going to look like. Now what I'm thinking is I want to have a dialogue at the bottom, which would essentially be, if you think about the Pokemon games, that's where you can select your attacks, where you can see dialogue about how much damage you do, or what attack the enemy uses and how much damage they do to you, stuff like that. And then up above there, I'd like to have kind of like a grass texture, just one row of that. It kind of fades down into blackness that the message box is on. And then you'll see some kind of large tree, kind of foresty looking background, and you'll just see the player sprite as well as an enemy sprite facing each other. I think that would be good just to begin with, so you have some kind of visual on there. And I don't think I'll have any good battle animations for them right away at the beginning, but as long as I have them kind of placeholding in the meantime, I think that'll work out just fine. So what I want to do first is just see if I can get that message box to display at the bottom. And to do that, I don't necessarily know that I can completely leverage this existing message box component, because I am going to need to put in some custom menu type stuff. So I could use this kind of to display text about what's going on, like, you know, enemy did such and such damage, or you do so much damage, blah blah blah. But I will need the custom kind of menu stuff too, which I'm not just going to cram into this. This does have yes no stuff, but I'm not going to have to use that in the battle dialogue, I don't think. So we'll kind of ignore the fact that that exists for now. And how is this leveraged in places? We don't trigger dialogue. Oh, we do actually. So let me just hit that and we'll see what happens. So down here at battle logic, let me just do trigger dialogue, and we'll pass in random dialogue string, and we'll see what happens with that. I think that should pop up our dialog box, and then it should kind of pause stuff until I tell the dialog box to go away. Maybe not. Interesting. Screen wipe. So where else is this actually used? And what's the context? This can't only be used in this function. That would be strange. Or in this component. So what's the function that we use to actually display this? So render, obviously, but how do we interact with it? Message box showing. I know that's a thing. Trigger dialogue. Yes, no. Interact. Interaction, that triggers the dialogue. Strike. So, okay. When you kill that intro skeleton dude, that triggers a dialogue for what you collected. Right, so if I load this up and I talk to him, there's dialogue. I kill him, there's that message box dialogue as well. So why does that not work in the battle screen? You'd think I should know this because I wrote this code, but sometimes when you haven't looked at something in, 3/4 of a year or so, you kind of forget the nuances there. Trigger dialog, it shows message showing is true. Alright, I think that's because in the engine, if message box is showing, let me go to the render update here, update, and blah blah blah, render. If message box showing, we're doing that, and then the battle rendering is outside of that, so that's probably getting rendered on top. So what I need to do is that else render battle, or frankly you don't even need an else. You just render them both. So the battle gets rendered and then you do the message box on top. Compile. So that should still be fine. Do that. Pops up the dialog box. And then when I hit enter, it goes away. So realistically, I don't know if I necessarily need that condition there. I think I can pull this one out, and in either case, we can just display the message box. So that still shows there. And then that'll pop up here. I don't know why it dies when I close the message box though. But that's kind of its own little problem, isn't it? Could have to do with the update. Render. Message box I don't believe actually has an update. No, it doesn't. It just has a render because the state gets modified based on what you do. That being said, the handle key down. So that's obviously getting handled. One thing, sorry, I'm noticing how I'm using certain pound defines here. If we go back into JSON reader, some of that stuff can just get compiled out, right? So we don't need extra code hanging out in our executable if I do things this way. It's not highly necessary. It's just something that I noticed I had done a few times in the code in various places, so I thought, why not just keep things consistent there? So, okay, getting back to things here. So I'm triggering dialog here. Let me try something else quick. I actually don't know how you could update that Boolean when this closes. You really shouldn't need to... I don't know if it's just trying to trigger that again once it's done, which really shouldn't be a problem, but it probably is, knowing how things are working right now. Let me change this quick so we load up the battle map right off the bat. Do that. Handle key down. Handle key down. Space. Show pagination. If space key is down, if this is a yes/no dialogue. Okay. Well, here's kind of a problem. I have this hard-coded so that it's working in conjunction with an actor. I knew this was going to come back and bite me in the butt. Because up until this point, I was only using the message box in conjunction with talking to people and not just popping up random messages about stuff. Now, I could maybe because it's dropping into this conditional here. We're not in a yes/no dialogue. We're not showing the pagination icon, thus we're doing this stuff. If that's the case, we're not doing a post-talk event because we're not actually trying to interact with someone. But it's still going to be running this function anyway. So actually, if I comment this out, just to kind of demonstrate here, it should work. Countdown, message box pops, I close it, and well, it's going to render it again because that's just what's happening in the loop. That goes back to that conditional that I had tried to put in there. That being said, I might need to not leverage this message box so much, or I need to pull out this actor stuff and maybe see if interacting with, I don't know if that can be set to like a null pointer or something. I don't know if that works. Because what is that in the first place? Oh no, I could set that to a blank string when I'm done interacting with someone. So here, let me try this. We'll see what that's actually set to, because if it is a blank string, then I can just not do this. and that'll pop when I close it. Well, yeah, so that is a blank string. Now, the other question becomes, here, let me comment that out for right now. The other question becomes, what happens if I've previously interacted with somebody? Does that get cleared out? And I'm guessing the answer is probably no, but I'm going to find out quick. Like if I talk to this guy, yeah, that's going to remain probably the case here. Yeah, okay. If I do want to leverage this message box, what I'm going to have to do is save that. No, I was thinking, because we don't want to run that. We just want to I don't know if in the post talk function we could clear interacting with, but that gets problematic too because every actor can have their own kind of custom post talk function. Though actor post talk, bear with me here. So I can call the base class function like that. If there's a function, adding the base class's name. Okay, so the base class's name, it doesn't have a super base keyword. So in this case, in my derived objects, so like Bone Lord here, post talk, I need to call actor post talk. And I'm going to have to do that in all of my actor classes. So Bone Lord is 1. Intro Skeleton is 1. Teleport Gnome. He does not have a post talk. I need the actual signature for that though. Virtual void. Okay, so it doesn't take any parameters, so that's good. Yes, no response. We will want an override for that too. Post hoc. Pre-talk, yes, no response. That gets the same thing actually. So we'll just copy that. So if that is not blank, we'll do that. And again, same condition up here. Indent that. Build. Hopefully nothing blows up. Of course it did. Post hoc member function not declared in teleport gnome. Oh, response. Post talk function. Oh, right, that needs to go in the header as well. The fact that you need headers in the first place, well, let me not jump on that tangent, I guess. That's gonna just... In this day and age, you should not need headers for any programming language. Like, I understand what the point is or what they're trying to accomplish with it, but I think it's a little bit absurd. Okay, so we'll talk to this guy. And he dies. Not graveyard. Go in here. Okay, that seems to be working. And again, it's not closing, but that's because it's in a loop. So I don't hugely like the fact that this is in here, but by nature of the fact that you can interact with actors and they do need to speak to you via the message box, I don't think that's a horribly inconsequential thing to have in there. Like, you kind of need that, and it has to be somewhere. You can't really abstract that out, I mean, you could, but I don't know if it's beneficial to abstract that out any more than it is right now. Okay, so going back into here, I do still wonder like, we'll need to kind of maintain some internal state for what shows up in here. So it could be, I mean, starting out with, you have something like skeleton appears. Now the question, I guess, is what happens if below there we call this again? Something else happens. Is it just gonna kind of flip-flop between those two? Bilked, right? You can type really well. Let me change this back to the battle map so we can keep testing things. Something else happens. Yeah, that's just gonna kind of walk on top of the previous one. But ultimately, it's going to be like skeleton appears, then you show, you know, your custom skeleton appears. So you want intro text, and then battle menu, and then you want to do, here, let me just do a multi-line comment here. So battle menu, and then after that, pick attack, and then deal damage, take damage from enemy if it's still alive, right? And then I mean basically continue, you go back to the beginning of that loop until the enemy is dead. So we need a way to kind of do this. And then of course right here at this point, your leverage dialog box to kind of tell you what's going on. The question becomes, how do we do this? Because when you look at the message box, when we're down here, we don't really have a way to like pass back a value basically to tell it that the message box has been closed. Right, so like you display this, you wait until dialog is closed, then ... I mean that's really the question there. So when you press the space bar, it needs to jump into this. And I'm not sure the best way to do that. Like we need to set a conditional somehow. Like if intro text if not intro text shown, do that, else do this crap. How does this get set though? That's the question. And I think I'm going to have to think about that a little bit and maybe get back with a course of action in the next video. because nobody really wants to sit here and watch me do that, I don't think. Or I could be mistaken. I mean, you never know. There has to be a way. There has to be an elegant way, and that's always the thing here. Like, we don't just want to sling more crap onto a crap pile. You know, at some point you want to start pulling things out of the crap pile, washing them off, and, you know, maybe seeing if you can find some gems. So I will think about this more, and I will be back in the next video and show you what my solution is going to be, and we'll start implementing some graphics on the screen.